Yeah, it's all good. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Session 2 of the Applied HE Fireside Chat. The topic for today's discussion is, can higher education contribute to the world's sustainable development agenda? My name is Mandy Mock, and I'm the founder and CEO of Applied HE. Applied HE is the new kid on the block as an international higher education service provider that specializes in evaluation, branding, marketing, and professional networking solutions. Tonight's fireside chat is presided over by the formidable and very friendly Dr. Janet Believer, who is the founder and director of Education Insight UK. Very much, and thanks also to our speakers from the US, Ireland, and China. Janet will provide you with a full introduction of the speakers shortly. Meanwhile, if you have a few minutes today after the fireside chat, please help us to complete the Applied HE Academic Happiness Survey. Let us know how satisfied you are with your life as an academic. To make it more convenient for you, you can find the link in the chat, so please spare a few minutes after this event and fill out the survey. We will be very grateful for your time. And don't worry, it is completely anonymous, so you can say anything you want. Now, without further ado, I'll hand over to Janet.
Thank you, Mandy. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all. I'm Janet Believer from Education Insight, an international education consultancy based in beautiful Bristol, UK. I take great pleasure in facilitating a distinguished panel of world-known scholars and practitioners. We will be discussing a very hot topic today, which focuses on the contribution of higher education to sustainability and climate change. At yesterday's webinar, organised by the UK's Higher Education Policy Institute on Higher Education and Environmental Sustainability, Professor Mark Fellows from the University of Reading remarked that students starting university this year will have lived through the 10 warmest years on record. Health and education are in the heart of the Sustainable Development Agenda. Only through a concerted global effort built on true partnerships, we can tackle climate change, reduce inequalities, and work collectively towards the ending of poverty. I'm truly honored to introduce today's speakers, and I'm very mindful that many of them need no introduction. I'm delighted to be joined today by Professor Nigel Healy, Professor of International Higher Education and Associate Vice President for Global Engagement at the University of Limerick in Ireland. Prior to his appointment at the University of Limerick, Professor Healy held senior academic positions across the globe at Fiji National University, Nottingham Trent University, University of Canterbury in New Zealand, and Manchester Metropolitan University in the UK. His current research interests lies in internationalization of higher education, transnational education, and higher education policy and management. I'm really pleased to be joined today by Ms. Yifan Wang. Yifan is a consultant with Capgemini Consulting. She's based in Shanghai in China and is engaged in delivering innovative technology solutions to clients and provides services for environmental education NGOs in China. She studies and works, has taken her to Australia, the US, Indonesia, Thailand, where she has worked in the field of higher education, investment banking, and project management. She founded the Women's Network of Australia-China Youth Association, which is the largest non-political youth organization between the two countries. She was also the first Global Citizen Award winner at the University of Newcastle in Australia, and the 2020 Young Australia-China Alumni of the Year Award finalist. Really pleased that Mr. Eddie West from San Diego State University has joined us. He's Assistant Dean and International Strategy and Programs. He provides leadership of international partnership development, collaborations, and overseas programs. From 2016 to 2019, Mr. West served as Assistant Dean, International Programs at Berkeley Extension, the Continuing and Professional Education Division of the University of California, Berkeley. Previously, he had international initiatives at the National Association for College Admission Counselling. Also, many of you would know it as NACAC. He's founding member of Kanye, the Climate Action Network for International Educators. I'm really delighted to be joined by Professor Jenny Lee from the Center for the Study of Higher Education at the University of Arizona in the US. Professor Lee's research examines ways that policies, geopolitics, social forces shape inequities in higher education in the US and abroad. Her comparative research on international student mobility and experiences in the US, Mexico, South Korea, South Africa over the past decade has been widely cited. She's author and co-author of over 120 publications and holds numerous editorial board positions, including co-editor of the Studies of Global Higher Education book series. She's held numerous scholar appointments in Korea and South Africa. Her latest research focuses on a very pertinent theme, geopolitics of global science. And with no further ado, I will hand over to Professor Healy to kick off today's conversation and set the scene for the discussion. Knight, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Janet, and welcome everybody. It's great to be back with you all. I'm going to start off by, I suppose, taking a particularly international higher education perspective on this challenge. We know that using the planet's resources sustainably without depleting future resources or damaging our ecosystems through climate change and pollution has been a challenge that until now has defeated humanity. Partly this is because it requires a global solution to which all countries have to sign up. President Trump's withdrawal in 2020 from the Paris Agreement highlights the limits of that international cooperation. Partly it's because of market failure. The costs of environmental degradation and pollution fall on global society, not on the governments and corporations that profit from the damage. And partly it's because the destruction of the planet's ecosystem is slow and easy to ignore for politicians and populations with short-term time horizons. And that's why universities have a unique role to play in tackling environmental sustainability, both in raising awareness and improving our understanding of the processes at work, as well as developing solutions like renewable energies, smart manufacturing, and the removal of CO2 from the atmosphere. And universities certainly have been highly proactive. The Times Higher Education Impact Rankings assess the contribution of universities to addressing the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And the 2021 rankings highlight the advances that have been made, especially by Australian, Irish, and UK universities. And I'm pleased to say that 3 of Ireland's universities, we only have 7, 3 of those 7 universities, including my own University of Limerick, is ranked in the top 50 in the Global Impact rankings. However, where I think we have to concede that higher education as a sector has failed to date is in taking a holistic view of its impact on the environment. And paradoxically, this is especially true of the Australian, Irish, and UK universities that feature so heavily in the rankings. So on the one hand, we've made great strides in making our campuses green and carbon neutral, with smart buildings, comprehensive recycling, and the promotion of green travel to work. We teach our students the science of climate change and the importance of biodiversity. Our scientists have developed new technologies in renewable energy, machine learning and AI, battery storage systems, electric vehicles, and so on. But at the same time, we depend financially on the hundreds of thousands of international students that travel to our campuses to study. One round trip from Beijing to London consumes, on the average, 2.5 tons of CO2 in economy class. For too long, we've separated the impact of our campus operations, our teaching and research, from the wider impact of our international student recruitment. I did a study a few years ago of the environmental sustainability plans and the internationalization strategies of UK universities. Strikingly, not one of the sustainability plans mentioned the environmental impact of international student recruitment, and not one of the internationalization strategies mentioned environmental sustainability. To conclude, I think the pandemic has taught us 3 important issues, or 3 important lessons. The first is we can cooperate globally, and we can make huge economic sacrifices when this is necessary. Secondly, we've learned that we can reduce air and road travel. We've done that during the pandemic, and that has significantly reduced greenhouse gas emissions. And thirdly, we've learned that we can manage many of our operations internationally. We can manage those virtually without needing to travel physically. So my hope is that as we restart international higher education, we can reflect on the lessons and pay much more explicit attention to the full environmental impact of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Nige. Excellent point, well made. And I will now hand over to Ifan, who will share her work with schools and other education establishments in China in the area of environmental sustainability. Ifan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Janet. And I applied higher HE for the kind invitation. So I'm very, very honored to join this panel with distinguished professors from universities around the world. I will share more perspective from the policy level in China, as well as its implementation and practice from what I've seen in the corporate, as well as my experience working with NGOs, education NGOs in China. So first of all, I would like to echo the Professor Nigel in terms of the Times Higher Education Impact Ranking. I think I was an international student in Australia, and I'm really involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, and seeing that how universities are kind of promoting the sustainable development goals. So I was proud that my alma mater, the University of Newcastle, was ranked 11th as a global sustainable development leader, and also University of Melbourne ranked 21st. So I think these are the great examples that we see higher education is playing an important role in promoting SDG goals. So next, I will share that some policy level, what I've seen, and also the practices in the corporate. We all know that the Chinese President Xi Jinping pledged to achieve ambitious goals in the United Nations General Assembly last year, that China aims to have CO2 emissions peak before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060. So I think this has shown the great responsibility China is willing to take as the largest emitter of greenhouse gases. So China is responsible for 28% of this gas, and what the Chinese government has done has really made the industries as well as education institutions to realize that this is the big thing that we need to achieve at this 2030 and 2016 point. And recently, China has also plans to launch a nationwide carbon trading market by the end of June this year, which also showing their strengthening efforts to reach this goal. And also, China Securities Regulatory Commission in May published a consultation paper on amendments to the standards concerning the contents and formats of information disclosure by companies offering securities to the public regarding their annual reports and semi-annual reports. And this has already shown that ESG disclosure is very, very important and on the long-term trend following the national policies. And this will also impact the listed companies' annual and semi-annual reports published in 2022. So next, I will also give an example about what I've experienced and have tested during my work as a consultant for my client. So start from the beginning of this year, we started to pilot a dashboard, which is to visualize the sustainability data on our platform called Origami. We piloted from Japan team first, and then it was quite successful in the first quarter. So currently we are planning to scale to other APAC markets and also global markets. So basically we use this Microsoft Power BI tool to automate packing and sales data collation and processing. And so that this we can generate a sustainability dashboard with sustainable resource workload and the process. So this has significantly reduced our manual effort, and it also helped our leaders to make better decisions from the insights derived from the dashboard. So we've also seen that a lot of companies are willing to transit from the traditional servers, physical servers, to cloud, like AWS or Azure. And this has also reduced a lot of greenhouse gases to contribute to the environmental friendly society. So overall, I think that no matter from the country level or the corporate level or institution level, we really make a lot of discussions around the carbon reduction and also strategies and plans to really work towards the goal. I think we can leverage the power of the different stakeholders and also technology to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2060. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Evan. And from Shanghai, we shall move very swiftly to San Diego. And Eddie, over to you.
Thank you, Janet, and pardon me, thank you, Applied HE and our colleagues like Yifan and Nigel. I'm really thrilled to be here today, really honored to be amongst this company. I'm just going to share a little bit about my own personal and professional journey into this topic and involvement. So just by way briefly of background, for about 20 years now, I've worked in international education, and I think the one most common unifying thread to the work that I've done over those years for different institutions has been about bringing about international student mobility. So something that Nigel touched on. So the core of my work has been trying to get students from country A to country B. And in doing so, myself and plenty of other colleagues getting on planes to go to country A and say, come on over to country B. And it's funny because about early in my career, again, 15, 20 years ago, I remember remarking to a much more senior and wiser colleague and saying, well, isn't it great that our work is relatively green? We're not digging up coal, or we're not, spewing toxins into the air. And this much more senior and wiser colleague of mine sort of looked at me and said, Eddie, we're not that green, actually. Think about all that carbon that we're pumping out into the air with all that travel. And I was this young, very unaware guy. I was like, it's sort of a light bulb moment. But the problem for me, at least at that time, was this light bulb moment. I didn't feel like I could do anything with it. There weren't a lot of people, to, I think, Janet and others' points earlier, there weren't a lot of people talking about this at that time. So fast forward 5-10 more years to 5-10 years later, and all of a sudden we're starting to see more and more awareness, consciousness raising of environmental sustainability issues, and increasingly within international education, more and more awareness of these adverse impacts of our activities. So later, I'm hoping to have some time to share a little bit about what I'm up to at San Diego State University, but in a brief moment of shameless self-promotion, I want to talk very quickly about Kanye, and I think that's partly why I was asked to join the panel. Kanye, and I think you can see it here, the Climate Action Network for International Educators. And very briefly, this is a nonprofit organization that was established only about a year ago by two amazing leaders in Australia and New Zealand, Elsa Lamont, who I think Janet knows well as Pitulia Nicola in New Zealand. And essentially what Kanye is all about is conversations like this, convening thought leaders, if you will, interested parties, to raise awareness of the environmental impacts of our work and to try to crack that nut of, and again, I think Nigel touched on this earlier, we want students to go overseas and have these amazing experiences. And let's be real, we ourselves want to do that too. And we know that these experiences can be so transformational educationally. And yet we have these adverse impacts. So how do we square those two things? So I won't dwell on exactly what Kanye is up to try and square these competing imperatives, but suffice to say that it's a movement, I guess if you will, to raise awareness, to draw in others, purely volunteer-led, at least right now, so that conversations like this can happen much more frequently. And instead of being kind of not a fringe activity, it is core to the work that we as international educators do. So again, looking forward to sharing more a little bit later today.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Eddie. And what we're going to do now is Jenny is going to take us from sustainability to regenerativity, and we'll draw on her very latest research, hot off the press, only published at the weekend. And I can't wait to hear more about it. Jenny, over to you.
Thanks, Janet, and thanks everyone for the opportunity. So much of what I'm sharing is coming from a leading article that is now on University World News. So I do encourage you, if you're interested, to please go take a look. There's no paywall. You can share amongst your friends. But you know, I'll be honest, for the longest time, I've kind of veered away from sustainability, at least in my area, because I find it extremely depressing. There's only so much I can do in saving plastic straws or recycling or limiting my travel. But I cannot stand to see yet another polar bear drowning, with the global warming that's happening. So much of the terrible things that we are seeing in the news, it's not a very pleasant thing to experience and certainly to delve into. I've even been told that conservationists have the most depressing position because of the scale and scope and the acceleration of the pollution and the global warming that we are experiencing more and more as we, at least for me, that I've witnessed throughout my lifetime. And then something happened during this terrible pandemic that cost so many lives, and just, the many ways that people's lives have just been overturned. I think especially for those of us who are in international education and in study abroad offices, where we were not able to fulfill much of the good work we've been doing. But something positive happened in the midst of all those things, is that we experienced, as Nigel mentioned, reduced pollution. We've seen wildlife enter habitats as we were all in lockdown, entering areas that they have normally been excluded from. And we saw parts of the earth regenerate. And I don't know about you, but in my wildest dreams, did I ever think that anything like that could be reversed at that scale. So now we are getting vaccinated, or some of us are, some are still have quite a ways to go. But we are experiencing, at least in the United States and maybe those wealthier places that have access to a vaccine, something that has been termed revenge travel. Basically, it's when you're deprived so long, you're going to overcompensate for that. And I think those in the tourism industry are quite looking forward to these increased opportunities, especially in the financial benefits of that. And I think for those that are using what I would say an older paradigm of sustainability is saying, wait, we should all be staying home. We should kind of resume our lifestyle during lockdown. We should consume less, right? And I think that's a really difficult thing to ask of, at least human behavior. I guess I'm a cynic of human behavior and their ability to refrain from pleasure and indulgences and really, the amazing opportunities that come with seeing the world. So now we're experiencing this potential surge of travel that will be coming. But at the same time, there's places that have recognized that we cannot just suddenly flood national parks. We can't suddenly flood fragile ecosystems. And so now we will be experiencing travel as being very exclusive and limited to the few, based on the lessons that we've learned about places we can access and places we must protect. And the article that I co-authored we talk about how international education is in danger of being the same, and actually has been pre-COVID, of being exclusive for those who can afford, those who come from particular institutions, those who have particular passports. And so we wanted to provide, based on the lessons of COVID, of a more hopeful message and a hopeful framework about regenerative education. The original title that I was thinking of is Sustainability is Out, Regenerativity is In. And basically, this is more than withholding, preserving, limiting, sustaining, because it maintains that the most ideal conditions were in the past and they were long gone. And regenerativity sees the potential and goes beyond, and we can actually make things better. So in the most simple terms, the metaphor that's used in the article is, it's the difference between leaving a tree untouched versus planting more trees. And it's about the human capacity to actually improve conditions rather than staying home and not being, further destroying our planet. It talks about the social responsibility that we have to make things better than just simply leaving them behind. So as this applies to the work that we do as international educators and administrators, is to help instill within our students a greater responsibility for their travel, of what they do, the places they go, and the people they meet. This is not a new idea. I'm not going to take credit for this. This is actually an age-old indigenous knowledge form of thinking, of that people and land are not separate. But I think for all too long, we think of traveling, maybe even some cases study abroad, is simply choosing a menu of very fun destinations. I'm thinking of an American student who goes and eats at McDonald's, just speaks English the entire time, talks to a lot of American friends, puts a lot of things on social media, and goes home without any understanding of local customs, traditions, history, people, service. The list goes on and on. So I think what this requires is a more conscious way of thinking about international education and how we direct our students. Of course, TNE has many benefits in reducing carbon emissions, but at the same time, even with TNE, I think there can be even a more conscious approach about the social responsibilities that we have. So I think that, just to sum it up, I think that there needs to be more consciousness about the roles we play as international education, especially when it involves travel. Yes, our carbon footprint matters, but I think that there are ways that we can make choices, encouraging our students to do the same. I was also, recently found out that generations Y and Z are far more conscious than mine and previous generations about responsibilities towards the planet. And I think that the interests are there with our students. I think they will increase, and I think it's up to us to harness that in ways to better and improve current conditions. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Very illuminating indeed. And this is the point when we open for questions and reflections from the audience. So if you're in the audience and you want to comment on what you've just heard, or you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will promote you as a panelist so you can ask your question. If you feel you are shy, you can actually post your question in the Q&A box or in the chat box, and I shall read it on your behalf. But everybody who is with us, the floor is yours. And perhaps while you're still thinking about and reflecting on what you've just heard, we've actually have an excellent data bank of questions that some of you have shared with us when you registered for this event. And while waiting for people to overcome their shyness, I may just read some of the questions that have been posted. We have a question from Manta Nabut from University of Mauritius. And she's asking, what can be done by individual academics so that we feel we contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals? And Another one, which is from a very old friend and an excellent colleague, Nico Just, from the African Center for Higher Education, Internationalization in South Africa. Nico reckons that the Sustainable Development Goals would only be achieved through inter-institutional collaboration. Is this the agenda of higher education post-COVID? So is this what the priorities should be in the post-COVID period? We also have a question, which is also a little bit of a provocation coming from Fino Jose. I think I can see Fino in the audience, but I do not see Fino raising a hand yet. And the question is the sustainable development concept in higher education sustainable? I wonder whether there are any immediate reflections or responses from the panel. Right?
I just respond to the first one, because I think that's is a kind of, I suppose, something that a lot of people have been thinking about, and I think Jenny sort of said this in hers, that you can feel a little bit overwhelmed, how many plastic straws can you do without, how much can you limit your travel, what can you do? I think one of the contributions that individual academics can make is to really contribute to two things, really. I mean, one is the internationalization at home agenda, where I think a lot of universities are starting to recognize that, there's much more we can do about providing an international perspective and cross-cultural development of cross-cultural skills within the curriculum of the home institution, in the way that curriculum is designed and the way we kind of draw in different perspectives. So I think that's one area. And the other is clearly in terms of curriculum design in addressing the SDGs. And I think most universities are now trying to tackle at the curriculum level a way of kind of weaving in those SDGs into their curriculum.
Thank you, Nigel. I see a comment posted by Robin Schultz, who most of us know very, very well, and he needs no introduction. One of the major contributors into the space that we are occupying right now. I wonder whether, Robin, you may want to come in, or I've just promoted you as a speaker in case you want to step in and offer your contribution.
Oh, great. Thanks, Janet. That's very kind of you. And it's great to see everybody. Really great presentations and such a great event. I was just wondering, Jenny, you kind of talked about this optimism that lots of us felt when we saw, even among, the devastation of the pandemic and everything closing, this regeneration of nature that was actually kind of nice to see, even amongst all the sadness. But it didn't seem to me, at least based on our experience here, to really be a turning point in terms of how international higher education works, some of the issues that Nigel and Eddie both touched upon. So I'm wondering if that wasn't the turning point, is there going to be one, do we think? What would it take to create a turning point? Or maybe is a turning point not the right way to think about it? Are the changes already going on? Is it more of an evolution? So I'm just, I guess, expressing my surprise that it wasn't a huge change that some people forecast. And if it wasn't, will there be a huge change?
Thanks, Robin. Good to hear your voice and for your question. And I appreciate the good work you've been doing in the field. It's been such an important contribution. Yeah, I think nature itself spoke very loudly and clearly, right, about what nature can do, but only so much. And the downside of what we experienced, though, is that the environment didn't fully improve, right? We know that there was increased poaching, there was more illegal activity. We know that there are places that are so reliant on tourism that they actually degraded. So there's an interdependence that I think we need to acknowledge, and that nature can only say so much, but now what do we do based on the lessons that we've learned? And I think as in answering, or hopefully in an attempt to answer your question, as international educators, those in the field of international higher education, now it's our turn. And I hope, I don't expect that the best had just happened. I think the problem has actually, you and I and many of us here have been talking and writing about the the problems now with international education is being viewed in many ways similarly as a very limited consumptive product for the elite few. I'm talking about the traditional mobility, the ones that probably are most destructive to our planet, and those that are particularly entering areas or places that aren't really of benefit to locals. I think where we go now is we take on these lessons and we think, and also especially convey as educators to our students, what international education beyond visiting the Eiffel Tower, going to Times Square in New York, what are some ways that what they care about actually connects to the land, to the environment, to the people, the choices that students make in going to particular destinations. I think as a field, we are so driven by prestige and rankings. These are the choices that guide the students, that places that they choose to attend. With no understanding of where this institution is located, who are the people there, what is the culture, what can I learn beyond just obtaining a very prestigious degree for me to get a better job elsewhere, right? And I think that the framework that has been used and being sold to students about prestige and power is very much contrary to what I think international education should be and can become. I think as well, one thing I didn't mention is not just the disappearance of, particular species, but even cultures and languages, right? And how much of that is integrated into the international student experience? When do students have the opportunity to visit a Native American site, to visit an indigenous area, to learn about their appreciation and relationship with land? What are some of the customs that they can learn? So, in the article I mentioned, students can, for example, engage in more community service. But it's certainly not one way. In what ways can we learn from our local cultures in ways to support them, but also to gain and learn? And I think there's a lot of wisdom there that I think settler colonialism has pretty much tried to erase. So I think that there's a whole host of issues in which that international education can be far more conscious, maybe not always generate the kind of profit that so many of us depend on. But I think there's a real social responsibility. And I really do believe that this is also what students want. I just don't know if it's been catered to. So that's I'm a very cynical person, but this is my optimistic spin on what we can become. And I think it's now our turn.
That's great. That's great, Jenny. Thank you. And it's actually Robin's comment and question and your responses also touch on quite a few questions that have been raised by several of the audience members, such as how can we integrate sustainable development into the curricula? It's a question posed by Anna May from the Central Philippine University. And also along those lines, I wonder whether I can kind of bring a perspective from Botswana, Rosalind and Likisana, who is asking about how can higher education help developing countries engage with the sustainable development goals? Are there any lessons that can be shared, any learnings that can be widened to a wider range of countries? And how can we be more proactive and more inclusive in this approach? I wonder whether anybody would like to kind of try to tackle curricula and sustainability, and also developing countries and their engagement with the sustainability agenda.
I'll just take a quick pass at part of that. One of the many things that I really appreciated from Robin's work was pointing out the differences among countries in terms of that consumptive lifestyle factor. I think Jenny touched on this too. And I don't know if it's true in all of the countries represented on the call today, but certainly within the US, there's been a lot more of a push to see a lot more student mobility to so-called non-traditional destinations and maybe what you might call lower consumption destinations. In terms of how other countries can be engaged in the sustainability or regenerativity dialogue. I think looking for opportunities to partner with sending countries, so to speak, that are prioritizing those non-traditional destinations. That's one angle to this. The one other thing I wanted to make a point about, something that was said earlier, and I think this was Jenny. I don't know if I'd go so far as to call myself a cynic about human nature, though I kind of tend towards that direction at times. One thing we've been grappling with at San Diego State University is this question of, yes, we want our students to be part of the solution. And in fact, they're often the ones that are driving the conversation more so than faculty or administrators, because again, as was remarked earlier, this has become such a kind of passionate or a topic of great passion by younger people. But if we put ourselves in the standpoint of advisors of students who are interested in taking an interest in study abroad, we've had this conversation at San Diego State where if someone walks into our study abroad office and says, you know, I want to go study in Japan because I've got, or I think I might want to go study abroad in Japan because I've got a little bit of a spark of an interest in that country. Should we be pressing our agenda and saying, yeah, maybe you should study closer to the US, like just south of the border. We're on the border with Mexico, because that will be lower in carbon intensity. You'll give off lesser by way of carbon emissions. And it's a real point of tension, because I think there's some of us who say, well, insofar as sustainability is paramount in importance, yes, we should be advising students in that direction. But the opposite school of thought would say, no, you want to take that student's interest, you want to build on it, you want to see that grow. So I think I would just kind of wrap that up by saying I really appreciated Jenny's article, because insofar as we have every right to be somewhat cynical about human nature, if you start to reframe these conversations in terms of what can this activity do to improve the situation versus just mere conservatism, I think you're just going to get a lot more buy-in. So I don't know that I answered the questions per se, but those are just some reflections.
And tonight, do you want to come in? And then Ifan.
Okay, so I just wanted to respond to there was a question about how can universities in developing countries kind of engage in the SDG research. I think that's how I understood it. And I thought I'd kind of give the example from my last university, which was Fiji National University, where we obviously based in the South Pacific. And a lot of the issues to do with climate change, the warming of the seas, the warming of the oceans, the increased intensity then of the tropical cyclones, the rising sea levels, and then all of the stuff around destruction of coral reefs, soil salination, and so on. These are all effects of climate change that are being directly felt by communities in certain parts of the world more than others. If you live in New York, it's really not having much of a direct effect on you. If you live in an outlying island where your house has been washed away by rising sea levels, and your crops are destroyed by salination of the soils, this is having a really direct impact on you. So what we tried to do was we focused a lot of our research on trying to find, we really focused on climate change adaptation rather than climate change or climate change resilience. So we were looking at projects that actually addressed the consequences of climate change. And often we would then partner with other universities internationally that could perhaps bring the science, the power of science to bear. But we had all the access to, the local landowners, to the local Makangali and so on, the tribes. That was a way of really having a significant impact of allowing people to do research that had major societal impact in the here and now.
That's great, thank you. And we're going to take a question or a point from Evangeline. Evangeline, do you want to come in?
Okay, good evening. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good evening. Ms. Mock and the panelists. The topic is very interesting. So my question is, are there existing models that are available for higher education institutions that we can use or adopt in incorporating sustainability to our curriculum? And this is, I'm referring to in partnership with the industry, the government, and private organizations. Because I believe it's not going to be enough if we have all the solutions, recommendations by the university if there is no partnership with other stakeholders in terms of promoting sustainability.
That's great. And we also have questions and comments from Suparto. Suparto, do you want to step in?
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, my comment or my question is very simple. I'm curious with the topic, can higher education contribute to sustainable development? In my opinion, it implies that so far the higher education does not have significant contributions to the development, to sustainable development, or at least mostly they do not do significantly in terms of sustainability of the development. Therefore, my question is that in your observations, maybe for Nigel or from Jenny or for Fiang, who was in Yifan, who is in China, in your observation, if we rated the contribution here from 1 to 10, in what positions are they now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before we move on to the answer questions, shall we take one more observation from Omolabake Fakunte? I think she's in the audience. Do you want to come in? I think I might have to grant you some powers first. There you are.
Yeah, thank you, Janet, and thanks everyone. It's lovely to hear everyone speak. And my point was just about what Nigel said about the institutional strategy, on internationalization at home. And I wonder if the panel could share their thoughts about managing this with what we all know to be the economic drive for internationalization, which of course still involves recruiting international students. How do we balance these two? Of course, in line with the SDGs and all what we've been talking about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we shall take one final reflection from Clay. Clay Hensley, do you want to step in?
Oh, sure. Sorry, I'm outside. So I wasn't sure if I wanted to unmute so you could hear all of Brooklyn in the background.
Oh, yes, please.
Such a great discussion among these wonderful experts. My question is simply that, with the political right emerging around the world and higher ed representing such a small part overall of immigration and mobility, I just wonder, how does higher ed innovate in this space responsibly, but not unintentionally justifying or empowering the nationalist forces that are hostile to immigration by unintentionally almost demonizing or making the kind of exchange and mobility, which does really depend on, as the speakers have noted, in-person interactions, immersive, authentic interactions. How do we not empower the right wing who are against that kind of exchange? That's my question.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for now. Shall we go back to the panelists to offer reflections and some answers to the questions asked so far? And we're going to go in reverse order this time. Shall we? Right, let's start with Ifan.
Thanks, Janet. So I would like to share one of my observations about the question relating to how developing countries can kind of involve more. I joined a workshop quite coincidentally a few weeks ago through the invitation of my friends. It's basically the startup in China that they adopted the 42 cards, which are invented by the Climate College. I think it's an international organization started in 2018. So basically, these 42 cards kind of tells you the causes and consequences of climate change. And we are divided into different groups, and we are given 10 sets of cards each time. And we have to map out what's the causes and what's the consequences. As we have more and more cards, we realize that the logic that we had before has to change. And sometimes when we read the jargon, we probably didn't understand what it really meant. And we had to look for clues at the back of the card to see what does that relate to. And some of them are quite technical about CO2 and also the causes, which started from industries, from transportation, from buildings. And at the end of these cards, it's the consequences, which relates to hunger, to famine, to flood, natural disasters, all in developing countries. So when we were discussing among the group of students who are both international and Chinese students, we really felt that a lot of the times for developed countries, we are at the cause, and the developing countries are at the consequences, which really made us feel heartbreaking. And we were discussing what are the ways that we can do to make sure that from our individuals, from our institutions, no matter at schools or corporates, we can contribute more to the carbon neutral society. So I think that was one of the examples that I have seen. So these organizations, they've already had 150,000 participants to join their workshops, and they had over 6,000 facilitators around the world. Some of them are also in developing countries. And I think it has also expanded to almost 25 countries. And people can look at their website called the Climate College. You can register and to attend the workshop, and then maybe as a facilitator, in order to let more people understand what's the causes and the consequences of the climate change. I think one of the good ways to involve more people from the education perspective, and these people are not necessary to be students, can be companies, can be from any organizations. Yeah. So that was one of the examples. And another example I want to share is I'm providing pro bono consulting service for an education NGO in China, which aims to be the leading organization teaching as an education institution for sustainable development goals. So one of their strategies was to offer more internship opportunities for university students, to work with them to conduct some climate-related research about environment, or maybe in the remote areas of China, and they have to to go to the field to do some surveys, interviews, and come back with a research report. And they had a partnership with the Oxford MPP program to offer students with their real on-the-ground experiences about the climate change, and also about the preservation of the local culture. So I think that was one of the examples that the NGOs and higher education institutions and also corporates can collaborate in order to have more hands-on experiences for students. So yeah, that's my sharing. Thank you.
That's great, Yvonne. Thank you so much. Fantastic examples there. And Eddie, any final comments and reflections from you?
You know, I'm just going to actually share briefly a story, and it picks up a little bit on Clay's spot-on observation about the political scene. My wife, in a past life, used to work for an environmental nonprofit organization named the Earth Island Institute, and based in Bay Area in California. And one time, the team there had the honor with a capital H, of getting to meet with then President Obama. And I always remember this story because they said, you know, in addition to President Obama complimenting the team on their good work, the biggest takeaway they took from that meeting with him was when he told them I need you to push me, because that's the way things are going to happen. I have to be responsive to the democratic push for action. I can't just decree that we're going to go do this because it's politically untenable for me to do so. And to me, that ties in a bit nicely with what Clay had observed, in that, you know, not to wax political here, but if you're looking at these right-wing extremists like Jair Bolsonaro or our horrible ex-president Trump, you name it, they're not driving solutions, they're driving the problem. The solutions have to come from the grassroots, and we have to push our leaders to the best of our ability to make this a priority.
That's a fantastic point. Thank you. Thank you, Eddie. Jenny, any final points and reflections?
Yeah, I'll try to keep this brief. There's a lot of very excellent questions that gave us a lot to think about. But there were several questions about the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, formerly Millennial Goals. I'll just say I'm not a fan of these goals. I don't find them very compatible, and I find them very impossible for some places in the world. So if you want to achieve them all, feel free, but I don't think that is the gold standard by which we should all be aiming for. And I'm just going to put it out there. But I do think, for those who are really bought into the SDGs, that higher education doesn't always do successfully, actually address each of those goals separately. You know, we have disciplines devoted to each of those. And I think this underscores the value of higher education. There was, you know, what can institutions do? I think for too long, environmental issues have been reserved as a particular subfield within biology, for example, right? And now we're seeing how this cuts across many social science fields across the university. I think there's ways that it can be more integrated into the consciousness of universities and not set aside as a segmented field that is off to the side, right? I think it could be more central to all of our disciplines and all of our work. To Clay's question as well, I'll also add not only the far right, there's also considerable science denial. There are swords of people that don't believe that human activity is associated with global warming. I think there's a lot more that universities can do to address these myths, these false, you know, the fake news and all of those things. I think that there's more that we can play in addressing this real resistance. You know, I think I'm preaching amongst the choir. And finally, I think that as we reflect upon our own field, you know, we're not completely immune from all of these problems, is that what are some of the embedded values, and this is my closing comment, embedded values within international education that are driving these problems. And I'll just name a few to get us started to think about, you know, values of competition. How do they actually support sustainability, right? In what ways does competition within institutions, within countries, maybe, you know, market bottom line agendas, in what ways may that actually take more of a precedence in how we make decisions versus social responsibilities that we have in the places that we work with? So I think that's just a question I want to throw out just as a moment of self-reflection in ways that we can also contribute to the issues that we've discussed.
That's so true, Jenny, and I love the way that you feel very comfortable pushing the boundaries out there, and educators and institutions out of their comfort zones. And Nige, over to you for final comments and reflections.
Okay, thank you very much, and it's lovely to see Robin Shields, who was my course director only 6 years ago, so I'm still in awe of him. I mean, Robin asked the question, are we past the tipping point, or will we go back to the bad old days, I suppose? And I think, you know, Jennifer kindly answered that with that kind of reference to revenge travel and so on. There is a risk that we go back. So I think for me, I guess, I think what a challenge for us is we need to understand, and we need our institutions to understand the true environmental cost of international mobility, and we need to spend that carbon as you know, as well and as sensibly as possible. So I liked a couple of points that Jenny made. You know, we need international mobility where it happens. It has to really count. It can't be superficial academic tourism where you just go visit Paris, have a McDonald's, take a couple of selfies, put it on Facebook, and then go back. I mean, you know, we've got to have very deep, immersive international mobility. That's, I think, that's the first point. And the second is, what will also really make it count is if it's accessible. If we make it available to the first in family, for example, who've never traveled internationally, rather than what often happens is the international mobility is kind of taken up by those who are wealthy and adds very little to their, you know, to their sort of stock. Somebody asked a question, how are we doing? Out of 10, I'd say 5. I think we're doing really well in research in terms of addressing some of these issues. I think teaching is catching up very rapidly, but I think this, you know, to get up to a kind of an A+, you know, we're going to need to connect all the dots up and make sure that it's the whole impact of universities, not just in isolated pockets.
It has been a truly illuminating discussion and most stimulating. I'm very grateful to all of you for your thoughts, for your time, for generously offering your thinking and sharing it with us. It's been a pleasure and honor to be part of this discussion. Thank you very much again. And at this point, I shall hand over to Mandy. Mandy, you're on mute.
Right, sorry about that. Thank you everyone for the very interesting discussion. I hope you've all enjoyed it as much as I have. I'd like to extend my deep appreciation to our wonderful speakers and moderator for their time and contribution. And also thank you, our participants, for joining us for this Applied HE Fireside Chat. This is the second session of the year, and while this marks the end of this particular webinar, we have many more events lined up in the months to come. The next regular Applied HE webinar is the Square the Circle debate. It is on the 7th of July, 2021, with the topic Increasing Access to Higher Education. 7th of July, 2021, with the topic Increasing Access to Higher Education will inevitably result in lower quality graduates. Very controversial indeed, so make sure you attend. This is a schedule for future Squaring the Circle debate. You'll note that we have a debate scheduled every other month on the first Wednesday of the month at 8 p.m. Singapore time, which is noon GMT. So please mark your calendars. The next Fireside Chat will be on Wednesday, 4th of August, 2021, with the topic PhD in the 21st Century, What It Takes. I hope you join us for this. So whenever there's not a Squaring the Circle debate, we will have a Fireside Chat to keep you engaged. And for this year, we will have a webinar every first Wednesday of the month with Fireside Chat and Squaring the Circle debate alternating every other month all the way to December of 2021. Always on a Wednesday evening, always at 8 p.m. Singapore time. So do keep your monthly first Wednesday nights free. Aside from webinars, Applied HE does a lot of other things as well. In January of this year, we launched the world's first composite world university ranking called the Rankometer. This is a new ranking that is based on one single and transparent benchmark. Now, we all know that there's been a huge proliferation of university rankings in recent years. Students, parents, and even employers simply don't know where to look for a reliable comparison of universities. With the Rankometer, we've solved that problem by providing a transparent and reliable measure of university quality. To be precise, the Rankometer is a composite ranking of the world's 5 most influential world university rankings. If you haven't already, you can check the result at appliedhe.com/Rankometer. January was a busy month for us. In addition to launching the Rankometer, we also launched Future, the world's first professional networking platform for the higher education sector. Future aims to connect everyone from high school to professional career to lifelong learning for the 3 E's: education, employment, and everything in between. Future's design for higher education leaders who want to stay informed about latest developments, events, and webinars in the sector. It also allows you to set up pages about topics that are of interest and relevance to you. You can discuss, comment, post news and events, repost, and much more. You can use Future as a teaching aid. You can also use Future for your alumni engagement and management. Just watch our demos that are posted on Future website. In phase 2, we will bring in more students, alumni, and employees for internships, research collaboration, and lifelong learning. So in short, eventually, Future will include the entire higher education and career experience from leaving high school to retirement. So please sign up for Future and encourage your friends and peers to sign up too. It's complimentary and it is the only networking platform you'll ever need. Extra, I've been mentioning this at every webinar that we've organized, and that is, we can promote your institution's news to your global target audience. So please send us your extraordinary news and press releases, or you can upload it yourself onto Future. It's yet another complimentary service from Applied HE, so please do take advantage of it. And I'm pleased to say, Applied HE now has 3 rating systems. They serve as benchmarks and marketing tools to your institution's quest for global branding and excellence. We have the all-round job-ready rating system to evaluate the quality of teaching and learning and employability of your graduates. An English-ready rating to evaluate the quality of English language as a medium of instruction in non-English speaking countries. And it's also a great marketing tool for the recruitment of international students as well. And the online-ready rating, which helps your institution benchmark and promote its online programs and courses. So do reach out to us if you would like to learn more about how these tools can translate into affordable strategies for global branding and marketing for your institution. A gentle reminder again, please complete the Applied HE Academic Happiness Survey after this session. You can find the link in the chat here. The survey is completely anonymous. We don't ask for any of your contact details, so feel free to let us team speak your mind, whatever. And last but not least, as you know, we are the new kid on the block, we still are, and now you have an alternative choice from what is currently available in the market. And we're very grateful for all the support that we can get, which is why I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge all our very supportive webinar partners. A big thank you for the valuable support given to Applied HE. Right, thanks very much, everyone. However, the evening is not over yet, so please do not leave the chat room. We want you to experience a networking atmosphere that is as creative and as close as we can get to a physical networking environment. So we're going to open the room now for a few minutes, and you can see each other, say hi, introduce yourself. You can also leave your name and contact in the chat box with a message of intention. This is as much as we can do for now in the name of networking. So please turn on your cameras. Over to you now, Peter, to get our social event started.
Hi, I've tried to upgrade many of you to panelists, which means that you can turn on your camera. So that should work. I'm trying to turn on YouTube because you can't have a party without music. Yes, so if you see a familiar face, do say hi to them. And
so your
oh, wait, I did everything wrong. Ha ha ha. What happens? How do I unshare? See, even after doing this, God knows how many times I still get it wrong. Let me try again.
You can unmute and speak to each other.
Ah, yeah, here we go. Yes. Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Nice to see all of you on the screen. Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Oh, who's all good morning at this time?
Good morning from Brooklyn.
Ah, there we go.
Morning from Mexico.
Oh, fantastic. And the good afternoon people who are getting ready for lunch?
Good evening from Philippines.
Ah, good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Philippines.
Eddie, are you actually in San Diego? Did you get up at before 5 a.m.?
2 cups of coffee, Clay. 2 cups of
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon from Edinburgh.
Oh, so it's lunchtime for you.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
lunch. I had to do QS Apple in November, and Janet was on one of those calls, and we had to get up about 3 in the morning.
Something like that. It was painful.
Yeah, it was pretty grim. I had to go to bed at 6 in the evening and wake up at 2 o'clock to have a shower. And there's no
Many
going
cups
back.
of coffee.
There's no going back to sleep afterwards.
Jenny, I guess you're on mountain time as well, so that's very early for you. Oh, she might have logged off.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to have to log off because it's a working afternoon here. It's just gone 2 in the afternoon. So, well, look, lovely to meet everybody and to see everyone, and you'll see another one of these in the future, eh?
Okay.
Yeah, it was a wonderful discussion. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Janet, you're a great moderator.
Fantastic discussion.
Thank you. Thanks, Nigel.
Okay.
Okay, good on you.
Good
Thanks,
morning.
Janet. Bye,
Good
everyone.
Thank you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.